The U.S. is planning to move its embassy in Israel to Jerusalem in just a few months. According to several reports out Friday, the new embassy will officially open May 14th, just in time for Israel's Independence Day. Trump administration officials told the Times of Israel that Congress was being notified of the decision Friday. Last month, senior officials told the New York Times the move could happen as soon as 2019, despite the administration originally planning not to rush the transition. President Donald Trump decided late last year to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and to move the U.S. embassy there. He had been promising to do so since he was on the campaign trail.
In gratitude to President Donald Trump for recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, the Sanhedrin and the Mikdash, that is, the Temple Educational Center, are minting a replica of the silver half-shekel coin that was to be donated by every Jewish male to the temple. But this new commemorative coin will contain the image of Cyrus and Donald Trump. Rabbi Hillel Weiss, who is the chairman of the Mikdash and Zion Association that initiates the temple reenactments and represents all the temple movements, explained that the initial motivation for putting the image of the US president on the coin was in gratitude for his support of Israel. He said, "Gratitude is an important and a holy trait. He did a great and historical thing that the Jewish people are grateful for when he declared Jerusalem to be Israel's capital city." An image of President Trump will be engraved alongside an image of the ancient Persian king, Cyrus, who facilitated the building of the Second Temple that ended the Babylonian exile in 538 BCE. The image you see here is only a proposed design. The actual coin may be slightly different. An inscription commemorating Lord Arthur Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary, who issued what was dubbed the Balfour Declaration that called for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in what was then the British Mandate of Palestine, will also appear on the face of the coin. On the reverse side of the coin, you will see an image of the temple.
70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore, and understand, that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate.
Mr. Prime Minister, Mrs. Netanyahu, it's a great honor to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Donald, Melania, Sarah and I want to thank you for your extraordinary friendship and hospitality. It's always a pleasure to see you both, but this is the first time we meet in Washington, America's capital, after you declared, Mr. President, Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And this was a historic proclamation, followed by your bold decision to move the embassy by our upcoming National Independence Day. I want to tell you that the Jewish people have a long memory. So we remember the proclamation of the great king, Cyrus the Great, Persian king, 2,500 years ago. He proclaimed that the Jewish exiles in Babylon can come back and rebuild our temple in Jerusalem. We remember 100 years ago, Lord Balfour, who issued the Balfour Proclamation that recognized the rights of the Jewish people in our ancestral homeland. We remember 70 years ago, President Harry S. Truman was the first leader to recognize the Jewish state. And we remember how a few weeks ago, President Donald J. Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Mr. President, this will be remembered by our people throughout the ages. And as you just said, others talked about it. You did it. So I want to thank you on behalf of the people of Israel. And I also want to I look forward to our discussions on both challenges and opportunities. If I had to say what is our greatest challenge in the Middle East to both our countries, to our Arab neighbors, it's encapsulated in one word: Iran. Iran has not given up its nuclear ambitions. It came out of this nuclear deal emboldened, enriched. It's practicing aggression everywhere, including on our own borders. And I think we have to stop this country that chants death to Israel, death to America. Iran must be stopped. That is our common challenge. The second is seeking, because of that challenge, to exploit the opportunity for peace, because the Arabs have never been closer to Israel. Israel has never been closer to the Arabs. And we seek also to broaden that peace to the Palestinians.
The American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem. Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
When President Trump officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, he wasn't just acknowledging the obvious, as he himself stated. According to Israel's leading rabbis, Trump is fulfilling an important prophecy. A day after Trump's historic declaration, 250 Israeli rabbis, including Chief Rabbi Yitzhak Yosef, sent a letter to the president. The letter, initiated by the saith's Chief Rabbi Shmuley Eliyahu, and delivered by Yossi Dagan, the head of the Samaria Regional Council, told the American president, "You have a rare privilege to be the first president to recognize Jerusalem as the eternal capital of the state of Israel. We are privileged to be living in a generation that is repeatedly witnessing the words of the prophets coming true. Jews have made Aliyah and are continuing to come to the land of Israel from all corners of the world. Israel triumphs over its enemies time after time. The mountains of Israel offer generous bounty and the economy is booming. We are privileged to be seeing the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Children play in its streets at Cherry 8:4, and we are confident in the fulfillment of all the prophecies. The United States is privileged to be one of the first nations to support the establishment of the State of Israel. The United States presidents have had the privilege of being at Israel's side and being a partner in the fulfillment of the vision of the prophets regarding the return to Zion and the establishment of the State of Israel. They continued, "We are confident that you will be remembered in the history of the Jewish people as one who stood at the forefront fearlessly. May it be his will that God's promise to Joshua 1:9 should be fulfilled in you. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you, wherever you go. Amen. Amen." The letter was signed by rabbis of a wide range of communities, including rabbinical judges and yeshiva heads. Chief Rabbi Yitzhak Yosef, National Religious Leader Rabbi Haim Druckmann, the Rabbi of Saith Shmuley Eliyahu, and Rabbi Eliakim Levinon of the Samaria region are some of the prominent signatories. The American people recognize that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, said Yossi Dagan, head of the Samaria Regional Council. We commend the president in his decision, but we ought to remember that Israel is an independent state and only it can make decisions for itself. With this recognition, we see the fulfillment of another step in the completion of the prophecy of Isaiah, that the nations of the world will recognize the centrality of Jerusalem, said Rabbi Eliyahu. For Zion's sake I will not keep silent, for Jerusalem's sake I will not remain quiet, till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. The nations will see your vindication. Isaiah 62:1. We hope that other enlightened and believing nations will follow in the footsteps of the United States. Satmar cautious about opposing Trump. The official Satmar court was ambivalent about how to respond to Trump. On the one hand, they oppose Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem. On the other hand, the reasoning behind their opposition to Zionism is the exile mentality that there is a religious obligation to refrain from provoking and antagonizing the nations of the world and maintain a controversial Jewish state. Accordingly, criticism of the White House itself, a form of provocation of the government under which Jews reside, is an unviable position. Therefore, the Satmar Rebbe, the leader of the community, has remained silent on the matter, and it is being handled by smaller subsects.
But the new head of the beast of the earth.
But have you ever asked God for forgiveness? I'm not sure I have. I just go and try and do a better job from there. I don't think so. I think if I do something wrong, I think I just try and make it right. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't. Now, when I take, when we go in church and when I drink my little wine, which is about the only wine I drink, and have my little cracker, I guess that's a form of asking for forgiveness. And I do that as often as possible because I feel cleansed, okay?
I stated on record in January 2017 that he and Pope Francis would come together, despite opposition from the mainstream media and many of my subscribers, who stated that the two were so diametrically opposed that they would not meet. And so here we are on May 24th, 2017, where these two leaders have come together seeking common goals, that is, the unification of religions in the spirit of peace, solidarity, and combating extremism. All in all, their meeting lasted less than an hour, and on its surface, there was some symbolism that I had anticipated. That is, Trump and his family would submit to Pope Francis. Sure enough, they did so, as Melania, Ivanka, and their aide all wore black veils and black dresses, which is a common practice of submission or respect amongst formal female visitors to the Vatican. This is in stark contrast to the fact that none of these women, or any of the women in the Trump entourage, wore any head covering at all during their visit to Saudi Arabia. However, the symbolism goes much, much deeper than this, and it is in regards to the gift that Donald Trump presented to Pope Francis. So what is this gift and what prophetic significance does it have? First, let me help you understand how God communicates with me and how he said that I must focus on Donald's gift. In running On Point Preparedness, I tirelessly research news articles, books, and even ancient texts. These activities, along with my full-time job, 2 children, and wife, prevent me from getting back to hobbies and the actual original founding purpose of On Point Preparedness, which was based on wilderness survival. 3 days earlier, on May 21st, 2017, with what little free time I had, I picked up the following wild edible book from my collection of about 12 or so wild edible books. Each of these books is several hundred pages long and contain information about hundreds of different plants. I was only able to read a single section about one plant which I had not researched before, and that is the North American lotus plant, known as the Nambo lutea. This event by itself is essentially meaningless. That is, until I recognized that one of the gifts that Donald Trump presented to Pope Francis was a bronze sculpture of the exact lotus species I was reading about 3 days earlier. Is it mere coincidence that of all the gifts that Donald Trump could present to Pope Francis, it would be one species of plant out of several thousands of species of plants? And that I, one who committed to his subscribers that this event would be prophetic and that I would be analyzing the symbolism, would have read about this very same species only 3 days earlier. So what is the important symbolism? The lotus is one of the most occult and ancient symbols of the natural world. And the fact that Donald Trump chose this sculpture, which was entitled Rising Above, is of grave concern. The lotus is the flower sacred to the Aryan Hindus, Egyptians, Buddhists, and more. References to it are found in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Jewish mystic religion of Kabbalism, and several other pagan religion texts and sculptures. For the occult, it represents the divine rebirth unto enlightenment, an abstract concept that is brought to life in the concrete or visible form of a lotus. It is, in essence, the same symbolism as the enlightenment of the all-seeing third eye. To name a few examples of its prevalence, you can see this in the occult film I, Pet Goat 2, where a lotus flower is seen blooming at the heels of then President Obama. His face grows stark as he witnesses the reality of this transformative stage of enlightenment. In Egypt, you can see here the 4 sons of Horus being birthed out of the lotus flower. In Buddhism, Buddha is frequently attributed to holding the lotus, and the list goes on and on. The reason why the occult reveres this flower and its symbolism of rebirth unto enlightenment is best described by Helena P. Blavatsky, who is the co-founder of the Theosophical Society, and she writes specifically on the lotus flower. For reference, the Theosophical Society shares ideology and partnership with the Lucis Trust, an organization that directly worships Lucifer and states that he is a misrepresented angel that sacrificed himself for the good of mankind. In her book, The Secret Doctrine, she references a passage from the Kabbalistic manuscripts, which states, pointing to like signification was the lotus growing in the waters of the Nile. Its mode of growth peculiarly fitted it as a symbol of reproductive activities. The flower of the lotus, which is the bearer of the seed for reproduction, as the result of its maturing, is connected by its placenta-like attachment with Mother Earth, or the womb of Isis, through the water of the womb, that is, the river Nile, by means of the long cord-like stalk, the umbilicus. Nothing can be plainer than the symbol, and to make it perfect in its intended signification, a child is sometimes represented as seated in or issuing from the flower. So you can now see how the occult viewed the flower as a symbol of rebirth as a child, or this rebirth into enlightenment, represented by a child coming out of the flower head. The Kabbalistic manuscript continues with the sexual and reproductive symbolism of the lotus. It states the locality of the womb is to be taken as the most holy place, the sanctum sanctorum, and the veritable temple of the living God. This falls in line with all occult practices, as they practice sex magic and literally worship the female body. She also makes note of the lotus from the ancient Egyptian ritual Book of the Dead, which has a section entitled Transformation into the Lotus. It states a head emerging from this flower, the god exclaims, "I am the pure lotus, emerging from the luminous one. I carry the message of Horus. I am the pure lotus which comes from the solar fields." So, I believe that the Antichrist spirit was definitely at work in this meeting. Any multitude of gifts could have been given to Pope Francis. Books, medallions, sentimental items, other pieces of art, etc. But out of these multitudes, Donald Trump chose the lotus. As the Egyptian Book of the Dead states, is Donald affirming that he carries the message or gift of Horus, an enlightened message essentially from Lucifer? I guess that is up for you to decide.
Coal, oil, gas, these are God-given gifts, and they are ours for the taking.
When the Messiah comes, everyone on the planet will die. Everyone will be put to death.
Wait, now say that again. When the Messiah comes...
When the Messiah comes, everyone on the planet will die.
Okay.
It will be, Armageddon, and...
They'll be killed?
They'll be put, essentially they'll all die together, stop breathing, and so on. But all the righteous will be resurrected. And that process will begin geographically at the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, and then will spread across the planet. So it's a temporary measure, shouldn't be thought of as something horrific or barbaric. It is this process that is believed, especially in the Orthodox community.
People will say, well, we've got to support Israel if we want God's blessing on ourselves. If we want God's blessing on our church, if we want God's blessing on our nation, we must support a physical Israel. Well, if you just count back the last 66, 67 years of American history, do you find the blessing of God on our country? Did we have legalized abortion back in the 1940s? No, it's come since then. What was our debt in the 1940s versus today? What were we like then compared to what we are now? You can't convince me that the blessings of God have fallen on this country because of a quote-unquote promise to support a physical group of people somehow correlates to blessings from God.
Le Mashiach viendra que quand Édom, l'Europe, la chrétienté sera totalement tombée. Donc je vous pose la question, c'est une bonne nouvelle que l'islam envahisse l'Europe? C'est une excellente nouvelle, ça annonce la venue de Mashiach. Excellente nouvelle.
Being down here now, as different as it looks, I still have those visuals, those images in my mind. It happens in Israel on a daily basis. Those are the things we have to be careful of now, we have to watch for now.
Do you expect suicide bomb plane struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center 1 year ago? Hundreds of people have gathered here at Ground Zero to mark the anniversary in what is expected to be, we tell you that the anniversary ceremony will also include several moments of silence, marking the times that the hijacked jets placed roses on the site for a flower arrangement.
Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm, and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean and dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened.
I have in my possession a secret map by the planners of the New World Order.
Because the global order is changing again.
A new world order. Trump will be 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old his first full day in office, but what about Genesis chapter 4, verse 24, where it says, if Cain be avenged sevenfold, Cain being the first murderer, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. And it was Lamech the Kenite being quoted in Genesis 4:24, not God. The Kenites are the offspring of Cain, the literal offspring of Satan, and this is why Christ called them the generation of vipers in Matthew 23, and in Revelation chapter 3 verse 9, the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie, meaning these Kenites claim to be the tribe of Judah, they claim to be the state of Israel, but in reality, they are the serpent seed written of in Genesis chapter 3.